Good morning. You're watching the morning show here on Horizon News. I'm Biola Labi.
Good morning. I'm Veronica Odeka.
Good morning. I'm Tunde Abiola.
The poor state of healthcare delivery in Nigeria continues to erode public confidence in the country's hospital and clinics. And this situation has forced a lot of middle-class Nigerians into seeking help abroad. But Reddington Hospital here in Lagos is passionate about reversing that situation, as could be seen from our next video.
Reddington Hospital's latest effort at bringing succor to patients needing specialized medical attention is the establishment of the Neil Davidson Specialized Surgery and Intensive Care Center. This was a tribute to Dr. Neil Davidson, one of the pioneer consultants at the hospital. It was a gathering of some of the most distinguished medical authorities in Nigeria who took turns to look at the hospital's journey so far, as well as the vision behind the new project.
We look at the challenges faced by people requiring major to complex surgeries that need extensive post-operative intensive care, who elect to go abroad due to lack of confidence in our healthcare delivery system caused by inadequate facilities and competent expertise.
We have been encouraged by the results we've obtained following the treatment of a number of critically ill patients, which has demonstrated to us that it is possible to practice surgery and critical care to a very high standard in Nigeria, despite the numerous problems inherent in providing healthcare in Nigeria.
If you are to have a cardiac arrest, if your heart is to stop, one of the best places to be is an intensive care unit. And the reason is very simple. It has some of the most advanced monitoring. It has some of the best trained staff in the whole hospital. It is also the repository of a huge amount of diagnostic equipment.
The British Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria, Laura Bowell, related a personal near-death experience to underline the significance of what Reddington Hospital represents.
For a Nigerian woman who gets pregnant, she has almost a 5% chance of dying at childbirth. And I can tell you that had I not had access to excellent quality care, I and my son would have died undoubtedly when I had him, my second child. So I am acutely aware of the value of medical care and of how lucky I was. And indeed, I feel very privileged. But I do not want to feel privileged. I do not think it is right for the privileged only to have access to this quality of care. And this is why for me today is so important. It is a significant moment. It is a milestone in the journey to decent quality care for all.
Now declare the center officially open.
Ms. Bowell cut the tape to declare the center open and thereafter led a facility tour, which was as extensive as it was profound. The newest technologies in surgery and intensive care all in place, ready for the next emergency. But the management of this hospital is also taking the training of personnel required for operating this center very important.
It is virtually impossible to do anything at a very high level in medicine without training the people around you. And because training is integral to what we do, it is actually quite easy to train the people with you. What isn't easy is to change attitudes and behavior.
I've seen it today in this critical care center.
The British envoy spoke about the possible trickle-down effect of the Reddington initiative on the ailing Nigerian health sector.
I hope today will be part of the journey to restore the trust in health services, to motivate people to become doctors. It is an incredibly noble profession, and to reinvest in the health system so that everyone in Nigeria, be they wealthy or poor, can have access to decent quality healthcare.
The coming on stream of the Neil Davidson Specialized Center and Surgery and Intensive Care may just represent the opening of another frontier in the battle to stop expensive medical pilgrimage by Nigerians to foreign lands. Charles Ohauku, Arise News, Lagos, Nigeria.
Thank you for that. Dr. Tunde Lalude is a UK-trained consultant, general, and a laparoscopic surgeon with over 20 years postgraduate experience. He holds fellowships from the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. He has been extensively involved in medical education with responsibility for students from Barts and the London Medical School and higher surgical trainees from the London Deanery. Dr. Lalude is the Group Medical Director and Chief of Surgery of the Reddington Hospital Group. Welcome to the morning show. It's good to have you. Also in the studio is Dr. Babashi Oyeshala, who is a UK-trained anesthesiologist and intensive care specialist with over 25 years experience in the practice of medicine in anesthesia and critical care in the UK and Nigeria. He began his medical career after graduating with honors from the University of Lagos in 1986. Dr. Oyeshala has already co-authored or published 8 important articles on medicine. At one point, took a year off his practice in the UK to join the University of Los Angeles in California as a visiting assistant professor in 1998. Dr. Oyeshala is the medical director and chief of intensive care at the Neil Davison Critical Care Center in Reddington, at Reddington Hospital Group. Welcome to the morning show. It's
Thank you.
a pleasure to have both of you here.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
So the first thing I want to do is say congratulations on the launching and opening of the Neil Davidson Critical Care Center.
Thank you.
The second thing I wanted you to tell us is, how is this different from Reddington's normal services? What does this add to the services, and how is this a game changer in Nigerians' public health?
Well, what we've done, I mean, we've always provided surgery as well as a small critical care operation. But what we've now done is to expand that significantly, so that we've invested in significant amounts of new equipment to do more modern things because intensive care has been advancing and has become more complex. And because of the changing population, people growing older, having potential comorbidities, you now find that there is an increasing need to support surgery with critical care because you will potentially have an adverse outcome if you successfully perform an operation. However, you don't have good aftercare. Patients will die. So it is necessary. And what we've now done is expand to 7 beds. We previously had a 2-bed unit, but we now have a 7-bed dedicated unit where the sole function or purpose is to provide critical care, which means that we staff it in a certain way with experts, such as my colleague, Dr. Oyeshala, nurses, physiotherapists. There's a whole group who will work together, and over time, it's just like the U.S. Marine Corps, where everyone works together. They know what they're doing. There's it as a single. This
is like
unit.
a military operation you're running here. You're running your own battalion.
Minus the guns.
No guns in the ER. So, Doc, tell us, when you look at how this is going to change the game, I mean, you're going from 2 beds to 7 beds. How is that? I mean, and you're saying that this is like a military operation. Does that mean that you're turning over people much more faster? Is that, what is this? How is this big for you? I mean, it's a big launch. I'm sure it's a big investment.
Significant.
So tell us, how is this like big for you? We want people at home to understand how big this is and what this means for Nigeria.
Yes, and just because there were 2 beds before and there are 7 beds now, doesn't necessarily translate just into doing 7 rather than 2. But there's also been an upgrading, significant upscaling of the quality and standard of critical care that can be delivered. There's significantly new addition of equipment, and the equipment that was there now is becoming increasingly sophisticated. And of course, the implication anywhere in any kind of industry with that kind of technological upgrade is the standard of care and the outcomes that will improve.
I actually have something that I would like to ask because I feel like it was said intensive care is extremely, extremely important. Just from a perspective as a mother, I've gone through 3 C-sections, and I know how the first one was critical because I suffered from preeclampsia. So I know how critical it was to make sure that even after the surgery and during the surgery and after the care was there. But most so importantly, the training of the staff. I think that goes a long way. So I would like to understand what goes into putting this team together, how much expertise, and especially in Nigeria where the doctors are not really well paid. A lot of them travel abroad to live there to have a living and earn. What's going to be in place, or how do you recruit your doctors to ensure that they stay, they're able to be paid, and to give the service that people do need to sustain themselves in the aftercare, the units for the hospital?
Well, there
It's a lot
are
of
people.
questions in one.
Sorry,
So just to warn you, we're all very passionate.
Yes,
of course, in Nigeria, everyone's passionate about healthcare.
Yes.
There are people like us who are at a certain stage in our careers where we've been abroad for a very long time.
Yes.
I did all of my postgraduate training in the UK, as did Dr. Oyeshala, and we're now back. So we will head. However, what we are doing is finding talented, and there are very talented people in Nigeria who are stifled by the system. So what we're doing is potentially to create an attractive environment for us to be able to recruit highly talented people, remunerate them appropriately, but more importantly, find people who are receptive in terms of attitudes and behaviors, as you alluded to, and that's extremely important, is people have the right attitude to want to learn and to want to work hard. And I think that just looking at certain other industries, if you look at the oil sector, for instance, a lot of them operate to a very high standard with Nigerian staff. So we believe it will be possible for us. We want to become almost like a magnet where people will potentially do anything to come and work in a center like this, because we have an environment which is not really duplicated in a lot of places in Nigeria.
So we should be looking out for you on the best places to work list.
Absolutely.
Because I know with oil and gas, when we had a guest on here, and they talked about the packages that are available to them.
Compensation.
So the compensation, so it kind of keeps people wanting to work in that sector. But of course, in the medical field here in Nigeria, doctors are not really well paid. So what incentives could be in place to make sure that you're not having a high turnover for doctors that would want
Well, there's an interesting thing, and that is that many years ago, there was a list of the 100 the best places to work in the United States. And one of those, I think it was about number 80-something, was a health system. And one thing struck me, which said that people were willing to take a pay cut to go and work there because the conditions were so good. Okay. So the thing is that I'm not promising we'll pay much more than anybody else. We will at least match. But if you have an option of working in 2 places, and one place is highly equipped with loads of training opportunities that you would not get anywhere else, we will hopefully make ourselves attractive enough to potential candidates or workers with us, bearing in mind that finance, in a way, is a bit limited because of the ability of Nigerians to pay. We don't want to raise costs too much, but at least be able to give our staff a pleasant working experience.
Now, I hate to say, but medical tourism is institutionalized in Nigeria. From the president to anybody who can afford it. If you have an ailment, you look for a way to check out, as it were. It costs the country $1.35 billion, and that's a conservative estimate a year. So how do you plan to turn this tide? How do you plan with the sort of launch of your intensive care unit, the first of its kind, how do you plan to convince Nigerians who are generally fixated on all things foreign, services, goods, we feel more confident abroad than we do here. What do you plan to do? How do you plan to sell?
Well, there's an interesting fact, actually, and that is that, because I interface with a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who tell me, well, I have patients now who see me, and they're happy to do it here in Nigeria. They say it's the confidence to meet someone they have confidence in. They don't want to travel. They don't want to get on a plane. When you go abroad, you want to go on holiday. You don't want to go for healthcare. And also, if you think about it, it's potentially not that pleasant an experience to go to a place like India, which is foreign to you. You've never been there before. You land there at an airport in the middle of somewhere you've never been before, to have potentially a very important thing in your life, procedure in your life to be performed. And your family's not there, they can't visit you in the morning, it's a foreign language, it's foreign food, they don't know your culture. You know, so we get increasingly get a lot of patients said, if we can have this in Nigeria, we want to have it here. And I'm pleased to say that there is an increasing quality network of well-trained physicians from the US, UK, Nigeria. I've met some very talented Nigerian clinicians. Just giving them the infrastructure and environment to be able to provide high-quality healthcare in Nigeria. And I joke to people and say, I do a lot of hemorrhoidectomies. I said, my patients will come in today, have an operation today, go home tomorrow morning. And I said, by the time my patient's back home relaxing, the guy going to India is still on the plane. So there are advantages, certainly, to having it done
so
here.
your patient you've been able to instill confidence in your patients and you too. What do you say to the people at home watching that are saying, yes, these guys are speaking Oyibo, I like that, but how do people become more confident, and how do we start to even build confidence in general in our medical system locally?
I mean, obviously, one of the things that would change that is time. You need time to demonstrate that things are changing for the better. It is not to say that there isn't already successful surgery or treatment being performed, but there have been cases where it's obvious that perhaps the patient would have survived if there were better equipment, better training, and everything else that goes with making healthcare work. One has to remember, though, that as much as time is of the essence, quality needs to be put in. We need to begin to invest significantly in the kind of equipment, environment, surroundings. We need to begin to value healthcare workers in a way that is different. And it's not, you alluded to pay, and they're not very well paid. Well, several studies have shown that it's not just the money. People need personal safety and security. People need to feel valued. People need to know that their children can go to good schools. So if you provide good accommodation in an environment where there's personal safety and security, et cetera, you can recruit and retain good staff.
So, at the end of the day, you're running a business. There's so many challenges with running a business in Nigeria. There's also additional challenges with running a business that is dealing with life and death on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis. With this type of investment, first of all, what does this type of investment mean for you? Were these done by investors? Were these local investment? Tell us more about the investment implication of this, how you're able to manage this business, and what are some of the biggest things that give you a headache as a doctor running this type of operation?
Well, certainly I'm not the money guy.
But you know that the money guy talks to you.
Yeah, he does. He keeps me on my toes as far as that's concerned. There are significant issues. Certainly in terms of sourcing finance in Nigeria can be obscenely expensive. The sort of rates we look at here are just absolutely
18
crazy.
to 22%.
Oh, madness, particularly when you're looking at healthcare. So what we're saying is I need to make a 20-something% profit to pay, just to pay. And then we haven't talked about running the business itself. And things like power generation, water generation, security, etc. All the things we know about. But the thing is that we have a CEO who is, I would say, a brave heart, who is ready to take risk. In fact, when he first built the hospital, people thought it was crazy, taking a loan of that size at that time, which was absolutely unheard of in medicine. But the thing is that if we don't, who will? Hopefully, as we go forward, we will be able to convince people with deep pockets that it is worthwhile investing in healthcare and potentially seeing it as part of CSR, for instance, where, I'm not going to go for the 20%. I'll give it 5%. I'm not saying they're not charities, but to give, say, single-digit special loans to healthcare to enable us to expand appropriately. Healthcare is expensive. The UK, 70 million people, spends about 125 billion pounds a year. The US spends about $2.5 trillion a year on healthcare. Modern healthcare is not cheap. And to achieve the things we want to do, it requires significant investment. But I leave the money side to the sort of financial engineers to figure out how we can afford the things we do. And one thing for us is that we have to potentially try and deliver affordable care. The Reddington is renowned as sort of higher level, and the fact of the matter is that type of healthcare costs money. But the idea going forward, and we were having a conversation earlier on, is how we can look at certain other parts of the world to develop models that allows us to be more affordable in terms of what we offer to patients.
Do you do a percentage of pro bono work a year as Reddington?
Well, we engage in a variety of activities as part of our CSR. But what we'd like to be able to do is to provide more on a sort of lower cost basis, making us much more accessible. I mean, we know that we've had quite a few patients, particularly thanks to my colleague here, who saved lives. I mean, people I know for certain, 100%, would be dead if we had not intervened, particularly people who've had childbirth, somewhat childbirth-related bleeding, etc., at death's door when they arrived, who are now home playing with their children. So we know we can do this. But we also know that out in the rural areas, villages, people are dying, because of the quality of healthcare. But what we say is we don't delude ourselves that we can save Nigeria on our own. But certainly, we want to be part of the solution to the problem. And part of what we can do, for instance, is to train. Is people come to us, they train for a couple of years, fellowships, do 1-2 years, learn how to do things properly, and hopefully we'll be able to say in the future that those people we train are out there saving lives on a daily basis.
Dr. Oyeshala, can you tell us about Hospital in a Box?
Oh my goodness, that goes back many years.
Fascinating.
Goes back many years. Yes, the concept was one which is still very close to my heart, in the sense that affordable healthcare, accessible healthcare, both of which it was meant to address, both accessibility and affordability, from the point of view a mobile solar-powered unit that can deliver a variety of healthcare interventions. And if the Mark II goes ahead, then it will be integrated with the internet. So now that we have connectivity at relatively low costs, you can go out into the remote areas, deliver care, obtain diagnostic physiological data, and have it processed centrally, as telemedicine being the operative word will do. Yes, interesting. I don't know where you found that.
She did some background digging on you. Yes. When you talk to Nigerians, one of the biggest fears is getting into a accident or any sort of thing that needs critical care right away. That is the biggest fear people have, is that I am going to be bleeding, I'm going to go to the hospital, and before I get there, I'm not going to be able to make it. When you look at the limited amount of critical care, how can that be? I don't want to use the word scaled, but I mean, at the end of the day, everyone in Nigeria, this is the biggest fear. What do we do? How can this be replicated in more places? What do we need to do? Is it people that we need to train more of? Is it just the funding? I mean,
it's a combination, isn't it? You need the money, you need time, you need political will, you need the private sector to be properly funded. And when I say properly, I mean properly from the point of view of affordable loans and corporate social responsibility. I mean, if only the following groups telecoms, banking, oil and gas, put, what, 1% of their profit? I mean, we're already on the way to funding. The other half of it, if you ask me, is accessibility, which you need to geographically and very scientifically place, these units. Now, the last and most important one, in my opinion, is we take critical care as the general panacea, and we forget that it's actually just as important to prevent people from getting to the point where they need critical care. It's well established that if certain interventions are taking place well in advance of the patient becoming critically ill, there will be no need for intensive care.
Can you expand on that? So give us an example of what are some of the things?
With the preventative things.
Yes. Because
You like that, don't you? I can see your eyes go,
Let's do some prevention.
What are some of the things?
Yes, a very simple example is kidney failure.
Okay.
It is probably not widely understood that plain dehydration, loss of fluid from the body, whether it be in the form of blood or just diarrhea and vomiting, if allowed to continue long enough without adequate replacement and monitoring, say, of blood pressure, urine output, etc., the patient will eventually go into kidney failure. And then they need intensive care. But you can see how simple that is. And several examples of where early intervention, using simple things, rehydration, as the example I've just given.
Oh. So when we mentioned that you were a laparoscopic surgeon. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the non-invasive type of surgeries that you're able to do, that you do on a daily basis?
Well, not so much at this point compared to when I was in the UK, but I'm a colorectal surgeon, which I define as bums and tums when people ask.
I'm like, people heard at home and was like,
So one of my major areas of expertise is treating bowel cancer. I'm sort of pretty passionate about that. So we can do those operations laparoscopically.
At Reddington?
Not so much at the moment, but it's something that we're progressing to because it needs a certain type of structure to do it. And also things like gallbladder operations now, the standard is to do it laparoscopically, which means that patients can be done as a day case. If you come in first thing in the morning, have the operation done, you can actually go home the same day, as opposed to about 4 days if you do it as an open procedure. Things like hernia repairs, we do appendicectomies, so the appendix operations, we do that on a regular basis. So, for instance, the last one I did, we operated about 11 p.m. And he was walking home with his friends at 12 o'clock the next day.
And that's here?
Yes, in Nigeria, yes.
So, sorry, just to ask, apart from yourself, what other a number of doctors that can perform these surgeries as well? Do you have a team in place at the moment now?
I'm the main laparoscopic surgeon, but the idea is to train we have other surgeons who are open surgeons, because that's really what we have in Nigeria. But the idea is, as we get the numbers, is to become a teaching institution for these things. And our dream is really, in a variety of areas, is to have what we call fellows. So these are people who have finished their postgraduate training, and then they will come to spend an extra year just learning to do the things that maybe they didn't learn to do as part of their program.
So those that want to specialize a bit, since it is...
Well, what fellowships normally afford is to acquire certain skills.
Yes, yeah.
In addition to, so if you have a particular interest, you then go to a hospital that's good at doing that particular procedure to learn.
So for people at home that are listening, they've heard about these services, they tell their family, take me to Reddington, and they probably get there and they can't afford these services. Are there payment plans? Like what kind of thing can be put in? Do you have anything in place for people that come and... do people come well prepared before?
Well, people usually come prepared. people usually come prepared. I mean, in terms of payment plans, one thing to explore is to transfer the risk
to a
bank or something like that.
So this is a call out to financial institutions because, like you said, it needs time, it needs investment, but we also need to call people to say, look, let's start to be creative about how we fund healthcare.
Because we, as an organization, are not very good at providing loans. It's not our core competence. And we cannot assess risk of default and et cetera, and if we got too many defaults, we'd go bankrupt and cease to operate. But certainly it would make sense for there to be specialist medical loans where people can go to a bank or something and get a loan for a procedure. I mean, that's actually a good idea. And certainly something we'd like to look at.
I mean, healthcare insurance becomes quite topical.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it? When you start to realize that nowhere in the world can patients actually afford to pay out of pocket.
Yes.
No.
And most parts of the world where this has been taken care of is insurance. It's pooled risk, where everybody pays a little bit. Doesn't stop private enterprise from starting their own private hospitals and charging what they like. But for the generality of the population, it has to be pooled risk in the form of insurance. And we're still in the process of developing models, workable, suitable models for implementing healthcare insurance in this environment. But don't take me down that road.
So, I mean, they're telling us that we have to go soon, but one of the things that we said in the beginning and when Tunde told us the number of how many people seek out medical tourism, when you look at a country like India, why is India a destination? And what has India done in its healthcare system to become a place people go to? And we aren't.
Yes, the India experts.
Okay.
Believe me.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's taken many years, but one of the key things was government focus. The government decided that it was going to support the development of the healthcare industry in India. So what it did was it encouraged its guys abroad to come back. People who are highly skilled, highly trained, to come back and set up in India. You know, we'll give you land, we'll give you money, we'll give you advantageous terms, we'll give you tax breaks.
Variety of incentives.
Absolutely. So lots of incentives, and the result is what you see today. You know, big, highly specialized hospitals. Another thing is that India has huge scale because of the number of people. You know, so hospitals are seeing very large numbers of people. And also, you also have there's an ecosystem that's built up around the healthcare as well, so that the consumables, the things you use in healthcare, are relatively cheap by international standards, and that adds to the fact that they can provide.
So did that spur growth in the pharma also industry? Because you're saying that the consumables that you need are cheaper in India.
Yes.
Is it because there was this investment in medical, then people were feeling more comfortable to invest in pharmaceuticals and those type of things? So, because they also have a pharma industry. I mean,
they have a great pharma industry. I mean, we all know the AIDS medication saga, but certainly they can get medication much cheaper than we can. But there are also lots of other things, IV fluids, things for doing cardiac catheterization, all those things that they actually make, and they make at a much lower cost.
But before we go, we need to address the brain drain. You've just touched on India. Are some of those measures applicable in Nigeria to reverse it? First of all, what causes it? How do we reverse it? And on a personal note, why do you both choose to practice medicine in Nigeria?
Yeah, why did you
what can you say?
We're mad.
What can you say to Nigerian youths? Because there's been a decline in the number of applicants to medical schools. We don't want this profession to become some kind of dying breed. Please address that.
You want to go first?
I'll defer to you.
I think there are two big reasons why doctors leave. There are several, but the two big ones one is the economy of being a doctor. It's just abysmal, isn't it? Doctors don't get car loans like they used to get when they got out of school. So you find you're a doctor that actually has to do a difficult job in a difficult environment, and you're not well remunerated. That's the first one. The second one is the working environment. It's very unsatisfying to know that as a doctor, you know what to do, but you haven't got the tools to do it. And this is largely due to a decline in the standards of our various teaching hospitals, etc., etc. Now, why did I come back? You answer
Why did
first.
we
Why
come
did you
back?
come back?
Well, I came back because you asked me to.
And in some ways, believe it or not, that is true. On the other hand, I think one does get to a stage in one's career, and not everybody. I mean, Nigeria is a difficult place, and I think anybody who lives here does it with great difficulty, compared with other parts of the world. But it is home. So a lot of people will come back because it is home. A lot of us also came back for compassionate reasons. We know for a fact that if we don't do it, nobody else will. You talked about medical tourism. Why would any other country try to ruin their own business by helping you to develop your own healthcare system? So until we have enough people, both locally as in government, political will, people who are philanthropists, they don't just want to buy generators and sell. They think, well, it will take me 20 years or so to make my money back, or I may never make this money back, but I'm going to invest it in healthcare. Until we begin to see that kind of thinking and that kind of activity, I think it's going to be a while. Why would I come back? It's home. There's a way you can sit abroad and criticize the system to death. But what are you doing about it?
Thank you.
I concur.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure having both of you, and I think we're definitely going to have you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. When we return, the former Commissioner for Information in River State, Nigeria, and human rights activist, Dr. Austin Tam George, will be joining us in the studios to discuss what Nigerian citizens must do to hold their leaders accountable. Stay with us.
Thank you.